Oh, okay. It loaded. It loaded. It loaded. It's all good. It is good in the neighborhood. The neighborhood is has never been better. So, cheeseburger. Before we get started, hello everyone. And Leo, I literally just turned off all of my alerts, but if it works, I will try and play it. So just give me a moment. But I have to tell Burger the story first. So when Burger ordered this delicious, fantastic chocolate orange, like this thing that I crave all year long, even when it's not like in my stores around my house. I was so excited. And then you just wanted to say boobs good. Then I get an email from Throne and it's like, so the orange doesn't exist. And I was like, bullshit, it totally exists. So then I go back and I find like another person on Amazon who's selling the orange for a similar price point, and I just change it and it lets it go through. And I'm like, awesome! I've got an orange. It's coming my way. I'm so excited. And so then I wait and I wait, and like a week or two go by, and then I get home and I see that I have a package on my porch, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's this one thing that I ordered because it had been like a week or two, and I completely forgotten about the chocolate orange. And so then I open the package, and inside the package is the chocolate orange, and I was like, it wasn't what I was expecting, but it's still a present, and it's so exciting, and I was so excited, so excited that I did not notice that there was something just not quite right about the box. And so then after I get home from work, I always have like a couple things that I do. I have to let the dogs out and then I have to get like an after school snack and I do all of this stuff. I set the chocolate orange, the box on my desk. And I was like, ooh, I am so ready. I'm like rubbing my hands together because, it's probably been sitting on my desk for like, mm, let's say like 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes at this point. And I can smell the chocolate because it was a hot day. It was probably one of the hotter days that we had this summer. And so I think that the chocolate kind of melted a little bit. And I was like, "Oh, it melted a little bit, but that's going to be fine. It'll be fine. I can eat chocolate orange goo. I'm not above eating chocolate orange goo." And as I pick up the box, oh no, not ads. Anything but ads. Shit, I can't stop them. Once they start, I can't stop them.
A minute
It.
remaining.
Oh no. Ads. Now I can stop them next time that it comes.
It's not this time.
Yeah, not this time. I can't change it now that it's already started. But
Oh, Leo's too kind.
Leo, oh my goodness.
Leo Black 31 bequeathed a tier 1 title to the haunted cheeseburger.
Leo
Leo
is
is
awesome.
awesome. Leo is astounding. Leo is fantastic. Leo is superb. Um, you're back from ads now. Okay, okay, okay. So, uh, so I get to my desk. I'm sitting at my desk. I'm about ready to play Final Fantasy. I don't remember which Final Fantasy it was. I was just so excited. I was like rubbing my hands together. I was like, yes. I pick up the box, and as I pick up the box kind of like falls apart a little bit. And as I pick up the box, an entire army of ants, like hundreds of ants, crawl out of the box and cover my hand. And my hand turns black and I feel them crawling all over my hand, and I scream like Usagi and Water both came into the room because they were like, "What? What's wrong?" And because I had been so excited, I was telling them how excited I was that I was going to eat this chocolate orange, and I'm screaming and I don't have any words, and I'm just holding this like fallen apart box of chocolate orange, and it squished like because it was hot and the chocolate melted, and it squished, and there were so many ants, and I dropped it onto my lap, and then I had ants in my pants, and I was jumping up and down, and I was screaming. So I threw the chocolate orange into the trash, even though it had been such a thoughtful gift, and I felt so bad, but I did not get to enjoy the chocolate orange. Instead, I have ant trauma. It's not your fault. I don't know where the ants came from. I don't know where they've been. I hope I hope they skip town with Cotton Eye Joe though, you know. And I'm pretty sure that I got them all. I think I just I'm going to avoid getting candy in the mail maybe. I don't know. Because like the chocolate oranges, they're not like hermetically sealed inside a box or in it. Like they're just kind of like wrapped in foil and popped in a box, you know. And I think that that was the problem. Like maybe if it had been like shrink wrapped or something, it would have been less prone to horror. Because I've had like like bagged candies sent to me before, and those were fine. But like, I don't know what I'm so nervous. So I think I took them off my throne, and if I didn't, I need to.
I think if you want them, it wouldn't be a bad idea to put them back during winter when the ants are asleep or dead.
Yeah, maybe that's totally a possibility. I mean, yeah, yes, accurate.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Burger.
that is quite an experience.
The it was you know I wasn't really sure what I was going to say if I was asked. If I Moogled NASA right now, and then I guess I would have to Moogle while reading The Telltale Heart. That reminds me, I need to tell you why we're here. Well, you see, so Tessric has a immaculate, just like velvety, soft, perfect voice for reading. And I have been complimented on my reading voice once or twice as well. And so we read a book a while back, and it was Jane
Pride and Prejudice.
Austen-ish novel. Oh, yeah, it was Jane Austen. Okay, I'm sorry. I just noticed that you were on top of chat on the screen. I was like, oh my god. Okay.
I was
Um,
trying to hide them, protect them from the ants.
Protect them from the ants. There's no ants anymore. They're all gone. I killed them all because yeah. Anyway, Tessrick and I decided that in honor of spooky, scary skeleton month, that we were going to read some spooky, scary stories from Edgar Allan Poe. And so you could sleep on both y'all's voices like clouds. Oh, that's so sweet. Uh, so we're going to read some Edgar Allan Poe stories, and
Hmm.
oh yeah, I was supposed to see if boobs would work. So we're gonna do that, and then I'm going to, for sure, mute boobs. It was muted. I did my job. Some
I
some
hope you
said
don't
it
have to read it
couldn't be
upside
done.
down, though.
Some said it couldn't be done. Yes, we are not reading upside down. We are reading right side up. And we are going to start with the first Edgar Allan Poe story that I ever read in middle school, maybe? The Telltale Heart. Tessric, what was your first Edgar Allan Poe story? I muted all of my sound alerts so that it wouldn't like interrupt the mood of the reading.
Which one was it? It wasn't the Raven. It was something else. It was a poem.
Oh, it was a poem?
Yes. I'm trying to remember which one it was.
Hmm. It wasn't the Raven. Hmm.
I think it might have... Was it Bells? It might have been Bells.
The Pit and the Pendulum. Ooh, the Pit and the Pendulum's a good one. The Bells? I don't know that I've heard that one
Mm-hmm.
before.
It is a bit of a lengthy one.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was El Dorado.
Ooh, that's a good
Galley
one.
Bedite, a gallant knight.
Mm-mm. Awesome. So,
That was my first experience to Edgar Allan Poe.
I have always enjoyed, like, Edgar Allan Poe. I memorized The Raven when I was in high school, and I was able to, like, mostly remember it one time when I was just, like, shitposting with Jinx while I was in a training arc in one of the Final Fantasy games. But we're not doing that today. I'm not going to try to remember all of the uh, words to that. That could be a challenge. That's not happening right now.
Maybe the last week of October.
Maybe, maybe you would have to feed me lines. I would be like, something about Lenore. Both the
Trying
Raven,
to do sign
nevermore.
language through the computer.
Yes. Cask of Amontillado was your first. I love that one. I really, really enjoy that one. The first time I read it, I did not understand what happened. I was pretty dumb. I couldn't figure out why this guy was taking this other guy down into the basement. I didn't understand like, how he was stuck there forever now. Like, I didn't get it. I had to take a quiz or something over it. I remember the next day, and like the quiz led my understanding better than actually reading the story. It was like, why would this person do this? And I'm like, I don't know. Uh, bad reasons. Okay, okay. So we were going to start with a telltale heart, and I need to
Yes.
make that visible. Boom. Now you can see it. Now you see me. Now you don't. That's right. You got gifted a
Thank you.
subscription to my
And
channel.
I don't know who to yell
Anonymous
at.
user bequeathed to tier 1
Jinx.
title to Tessric.
Anytime it's an
Was it
anonymous,
Jinx?
anytime it's an anonymous gift, it's Jinx.
Jinx did
Especially,
appear right after.
especially if it's near the first of the month or the last of the month. If it's near the beginning and end of the month, it is Jinx who did it. Poe was introduced to me in like third grade, and that was a million years ago. Wow. Wow. Oh, we didn't make an agreement on who would read first.
Well, it is your stream, so I think it'd be right for you to start.
All right. Okay. Well, Jinx, I'm glad that you got here just in time. You are perfectly on time. Oh, I didn't point out my pun, and I feel like I have to. it's spooky stories. There'll probably be a VOD for sure, for sure. What did I say? Oh, I made it spooky stories
Uh-huh.
because, like, oh, oh, I didn't mute the shout outs.
Oh? Oh?
Now I've muted the shout outs. There's no sound. No sound to the shout. Okay, we're gonna start reading some spooky stories. All of the sound alerts are muted. You can play them and waste 2 points, but none of them should make noise other than if I get like a random follower. I think Twitch will still say, a person has followed. Yep. Lardon, welcome in. Okay. True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How, then, am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. Is that a short paragraph?
That is one short paragraph.
It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so, by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever.
Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You have seen how wisely I proceeded, with caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then when I made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed so that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, oh so cautiously. Cautiously, for the hinges creak. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone and inquiring how he had passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man, indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept.
Upon the eighth night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph to think that there I was, opening the door, little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for as he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now, you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch, with the thick darkness, for the shutters were closed fast, through fear of robbers. And so, I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily, steadily. I had my head in and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour, I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime, I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I have done night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall.
Presently, I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of a mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief. Oh no, it was a low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound quite well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo. The terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt. I pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It's only a mouse crossing the floor. Or it is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found them all in vain. All in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room.
When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a little. A very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You could not imagine how stealthily, until at length a simple dim ray, like the thread of the spider, shot from out the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the sense? Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage.
But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker, and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. Grew louder, I say louder, every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous, so I am. And now at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet, for some minutes longer, I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leapt into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more.
If you still think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatsoever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. Ha ha ha!
When I made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men who introduced themselves, with perfect suavity, as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play has been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premise. I smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was from my own dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house, and I bade them to search well. I led them at length to his chamber and showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room, and desired them to here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of my victim.
The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But ere long, I felt myself getting pale, and I wished them gone. Uh-oh. Oh no! I wished them gone. And then the words went away. Okay,
My head ached, and
my
I
head
fancied a
ached and
ringing in my ears.
my head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears, but still they sat and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definiteness until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt, I now grew very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice. Yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as what a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key with violent gesticulations. But the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men, but the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed. I raved. I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting. I grated upon the boards, but the noise arose over all and continually increased. It grew louder, louder, louder. And still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible? They heard it not? Almighty God! No, no. They heard. They suspected. They knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now, again, hark! Louder! Louder! Louder!
Villains, I shrieked. Dissemble no more. I admitted the deed. Tear up the planks. Here is the beating of his hideous heart. Fact. The telltale heart
By Edgar Allan
is
Poe.
concluded.
I love this story so much. He was gonna get away with it. Ah, guilt. Guilt and shame can do a lot to a man.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, goodness. Sorry, I have way too much fun reading this story.
Have fun.
Oh, goodness. Oh, thank you for the applause. I appreciate it. Hoga, it's great to see you here. Why are you making me bald? Guilt and shame, the story of my life. Leo, have you murdered a man? Leo, do you hear the sound? Do you hear? Do you hear the beating? The ticking? Like a watch wrapped in cotton? Sorry, I'm drinking lots of water. Ah, goodness. So the second story that we chose to read was Bernice. Oh my goodness.
Indeed.
But I'm going to wait until after the ad because it's going to start very soon and I can't stop it. So instead, I'm just going to wait. Oh, stretch time. Oh, good stretch.
One good stretch.
Mm-hmm. Good. It was gonna start in the middle of like uh, the last time we switched, and I was like, no. So I paused it, and then it was like starts in 7 minutes. I was like, oh, we have to finish the story. Come to Santa, Leo. Leo, do
Leo.
not gift any more subs. You're not allowed. Not until my birthday. I just realized how silly my model looks when I'm sipping. Jinx, you should not. You're not donating subs on my birthday? Good. All the better. You're gonna buy up my entire throne. um, but deleting throne?
I'm just thinking, if I ever set up a throne link, it's not going to be to my throne. It's going to be to everyone else's throne.
Do not whatsoever spend any money on me. Spend it on important.
Yes. Food.
Yes, you. You are important. Spend it on you. Bernice. Good.
The ad has not played just yet.
It says it's in progress now for me.
Okay, once it's over for you.
I don't know that it's in progress. I mean, it could be lying to me.
Forgot that someone gifted me a sub. So of course I would not see it.
It was Leo. Leo did give you a sub. Leo's such a swell guy. Yep. All right, chat.
Yes.
Let's get together. It's time for a group hug.
Hug with everyone.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't you. Bullshit.
No, it was anonymous. So it could have been Jinx.
Oh, it was definitely Jinx. Oops. I'd rather spend money on the Empress. Gotta give the NASA all the gifts and love. No. Jinx? Jinx.
An anonymous user
The ad
bequeathed
should be
to tier
over
1
now.
title
It
to
is.
Hardhon.
I just saw no proof. Any anonymous gifted sub is from you. I know it is. Even if it's not from you, it is from you. And so I can get mad at you for any. Merci. You are the Leon. Jink, show me your bank statements. Thank you for giving us. Why are we? No, we are not doing a hype train. Oh, oh, no. Oh. No habla inglés. Inglés? No. Oh my goodness. How's your Latin?
It's been a very long time.
I mean, I've got the good old Catholic Latin where like I guess I say things weird because my brother makes fun of me because he was in like medical Latin. He's like, that's not how that's said. And so then I'm like, I don't know. It's how we used to sing it in church.
I do think this would be the Catholic Latin then.
Mm. I
Do you wish
mean,
to start?
I don't know. I don't want to read it wrong. It's fine.
You won't read
Dicebant
it wrong.
mihi sodales si sepulcrum amice visiterem curas mieas ac aliquar tulum por levitas. Misery is manifold. The wretchedness of earth is multiform. Overreaching the wide horizon as the rainbow, its hues are various as the hues of that arch, as distinct, too, yet as intimately blended. Overreaching the wide horizon as the rainbow, its hues are. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Ultimately, overreaching the wide horizon as the rainbow. How is it that from beauty I have derived a type of unloveliness, from the covenant of peace a simile of sorrow? But as in ethics, evil is the consequence of good, so in fact, out of joy is sorrow born. Either the memory of past bliss is the anguish of today, or the agonies which are have their origin in the ecstasies which might have been. A baptismal.
Baptismal
Okay, yes, you go.
is Aegeas. That of my family I will not mention. Yet there are no towers in the land more time-honored than my gloomy grey hereditary hall. Our line has been called a race of visionaries, and in many striking particulars, in the character of the family mansion, in the frescoes of the chief saloon, in the tapestries of the dormitories. I don't know why I said it that way. In the chiseling of some buttress in the armory, but more especially in the gallery of antique paintings, in the fashion of the library chamber, and lastly in the very particular name or nature of the library's contents, there is more than sufficient evidence to warrant the belief. The recollection of my earliest years are connected with that chamber, with its volumes, of which latter I will say no more. Here died my mother. Herein was I born, but it was mere idleness to say that I had not lived before, that the soul has no previous existence. You deny it? Let us not argue the matter. I convince myself. I seek not to convince. There is, however, A remembrance of aerial forms, of spiritual and meaning eyes, of sounds musical yet sad. A remembrance which will not be excluded, a memory, like a shadow, vague, variable, indefinite, unsteady, and like a shadow too, in the impossibility of my getting rid of it, while the sunlight of my reason shall exist.
In that chamber was I born, thus awaking from the long night of what seemed, but was not, non-entity, at once into the very regions of fairyland, into a palace of imagination, into the wild dominions of the monastic thought in your edition. It is not singular that I gazed around me with a startled and ardent eye, that I loitered away my boyhood in books and dissipated my youth in reverie, but it is singular that as years rolled away and the noon of manhood found me still in the mansion of my fathers, it is wonderful what stagnation there fell upon the springs of my life. Wonderful how total an inversion took place in the character of my commonest thought. The realities of the world affected me as visions, and as visions only, while the wild ideas of the land of dreams became, in turn, not the material of my everyday existence, but in very deed that existence utterly and solely in and of itself. Uh-oh. I think I broke my mouse. I don't know what that was. Okay.
Oh dear.
Is it still my turn? Bernice and I were cousins, and we grew up together in my paternal halls. Yet, differently we grew. I, ill of health and buried in gloom, she, agile, graceful, and overflowing with energy. Hers the ramble on the hillside, mine the studies of the cloister. I living within my own heart and addicted, body and soul, to the most intense and painful meditation. She, roaming carelessly through life with no thought of the shadows in her path or the silent flight of the raven-winged hours. Bernice! I call upon her name, Bernice! And from the gray ruins of memory, 1,000 tumultuous recollections are startled at the sound. Ah, vividly is her image before me now, as in the early days of her light-heartedness and joy. Oh, gorgeous yet fantastic beauty! Oh, sylph amid the shrubberies of Arnheim! Oh, naiad among its fountains! And then all is mystery and terror and a tale which should not be told. The disease, a fatal disease, fell like the simoon upon her frame, and even while I gazed upon her, the spirit of change swept over her, pervading her mind, her habits, and her character, and in a manner the most subtle and terrible, disturbing even the identity of her person. Alas, the destroyer came and went. And the victim? Where is she? I knew her not, or knew her no longer as Bernice.
Among the numerous train of maladies superinduced by that fatal and primary one which effected a revolution of so horrible a kind in the moral and physical being of my cousin, may be mentioned as the most distressing and obscene in its nature, a species of epilepsy not unfrequently terminating in trance itself, trance very nearly resembling positive dissolution, and from which her manner of recovery was in most instances startlingly abrupt. In the meantime, my own disease, for what I have been told that I should call it by no other application, or appellation, my own disease then grew upon me and assumed finally a monomanic character of a novel and extraordinary form, hourly and momentarily gaining vigor and at length obtaining over me the most incomprehensible ascendancy. This monomania, if I must so term it, consisted in a morbid irritability of those properties of the mind in metaphysical science termed the attentive. It is more than probable that I am not understood, but I fear, indeed, that it is no manner possible to convey the mind of the merely general reader an adequate idea of the nervous intensity of interest of which, in my case, the powers of meditation, not to speak technically, busied and buried themselves in the contemplation of even the most ordinary objects of the universe.
To muse.
And you
Oh, is it your story?
could continue.
I never know when to jump in. I'm sorry.
Nor do I. I've just been trying to guess it.
To muse for long, unwearied hours with my attention riveted to some frivolous device on the margin or in the typography of a book. To become absorbed for the better part of a summer's day in a quaint shadow falling aslant upon the tapestry or upon the floor. To lose myself for an entire night watching the steady flame of a lamp or the embers of a fire. To dream away whole days over the perfume of a flower, to repeat, monotonously, some common word until the sound, by dint of frequent repetition, ceased to convey any idea whatever to the mind. To lose all sense of motion or physical existence by means of absolute bodily quiescence, long and obstinately persevered in. Such were a few of the most common and least pernicious vagaries induced by a condition of the mental faculties, not, indeed, altogether unparalleled, but certainly bidding defiance to anything like analysis or explanation. Yet, let me not be misapprehended. The undue, earnest, and morbid attention thus excited by objects in their own nature frivolous must not be confounded in character with that ruminating propensity common to all mankind, and more especially indulged in by persons of ardent imagination. It was not even, as might be first supposed, an extreme condition or exaggeration of such propensity, but primarily an essentially distinct and different. In the one instance, the dreamer or enthusiast, by being interested by an object, usually not frivolous, imperceptibly loses sight of this object in a wilderness of deductions. Wilderness of deductions and suggestions issuing therefrom until, at the conclusion of a daydream, often replete with luxury, he finds the insummentum, or the first cause of his musings, entirely vanished and forgotten. In my case, the primary object was invariably frivolous, although assuming, through the medium of my distempered vision, a refracted and unreal importance. Few deductions, if any, were made, and those few pertinaciously returning in upon the original object as a center. The meditations were never pleasurable. And, at the termination of the reverie, the first cause, so far from being out of sight, had attained that supernaturally exaggerated interest which was the prevailing feature of the disease. In a word, the powers of mind more particularly exercised were with me, as I have said before, the attentive, and R with the daydreamer, the speculative. Sorry, I gotta wear my
My book.
leash from time to time. What the fuck is happening? Huh?
My books at this epoch, if they did not actually serve to irritate the disorder, partook, it will be perceived, largely in their imaginative and inconsequential nature of the characteristics quality of the disorder itself. I well remember, among others, the treatise of the noble Italian Coriolis, Secundus Curio, di Applemende Betty Regine Dei, St. Augustine's great
Great
work.
work.
I know I butchered that. I'm not Italian.
It's fine.
The City of God, and Tertullian de Carne Christi, in which the paradoxical sentence mortus est
The
de filius credibile est filia ineptum est et sepultus resurrexit certum est quiem possibile est occupied my undivided time for many weeks of laborious and fruitless investigation. That was a very unforgiving paragraph. I do not own a city because I am not a god. Thus
Oh
it
my
will
goodness.
appear that, shaken from its balance only by trivial things, my reason bore resemblance to that ocean crag spoken of by Ptolemy Hephaestion, which steadily resisted the attacks of human violence, and the fiercer fury of the waters and the winds trembled only to touch the flower called asphodel. And although, to a careless thinker, it might appear a matter beyond doubt that the alteration produced by her unhappy melody in the moral condition of Bernice would afford me many objects for the exercise of that intense and abnormal meditation whose nature I have been at some trouble in explaining. Yet such was not in any degree the case. In the lucid intervals of my infirmity, her calamity indeed gave me pain, and taking deeply to heart that total wreck of her and gentle life, I did not fall to ponder frequently and bitterly upon the wonder-working means by which so strange a revolution had been so suddenly brought to pass. But these reflections partook not of the idiosyncrasy of my disease, and were such as would have occurred under similar circumstances to the ordinary mass of mankind. True to its own character, my disorder revelled in the less important but more startling changes wrought in the physical frame of Bernice, in the singular and most appalling distortion of her personal identity.
During the brightest days of her unparalleled beauty, most surely I had never loved her. In the strange anomaly of my existence, feelings with me had never been of the heart, and my passions always were of the mind. Through the gray of the early morning, amongst the trellised shadows of the forest at noonday, and in the silence of my library at night, she had flitted by my eyes, and I had seen her, not as the living and breathing Bernice, but as the Bernice of a dream, not as the being of earth, earthy, but as the abstraction of such a being, not as a thing to admire, but to analyze, not as the object of love, but as the theme of the most abstruse, although desultory speculation. And now, I shuddered in her presence and grew pale at her approach, yet bitterly lamenting her fallen and desolate condition. I called to mind that she had loved me long, and in an evil moment, I spoke to her of marriage. And at length, the period of our nuptials was approaching, when upon an afternoon in the winter of the year, one of those unseasonably warm, calm, and misty days which are the nurse of the beautiful halcyon, I sat, and sat, as I thought, alone, in the inner apartment of the library. But on lifting my eyes, I saw that Bernice stood before me. Was it my own excited imagination, or the misty influence of that atmosphere, or the uncertain twilight of the chamber, or the gray draperies which fell around her figure that caused it in so vacil- vacillating and indistinct an outline? I could not tell. She spoke no word, and I, not for worlds, could I have uttered a syllable. An icy chill ran through my frame. A sense of insufferable anxiety oppressed me. A consuming curiosity pervaded my soul, and sinking back upon the chair, I remained for some time, breathless and motionless, with my eyes riveted upon her person. Alas, its emaciation was excessive, and not one vestige of the former being lurked in any single line of the contour. My burning glances at length fell upon the face.
Forehead was high and very pale, and singularly placid, and the once jetty hair fell partially over it, and overshadowed the hollow temples with innumerable ringlets, now of vivid yellow, and jarring discordantly in their fantastic character with the reigning melancholy of the countenance. The eyes were lifeless and lustreless, and seemingly pupilless, and I shrank involuntarily from their glassy stare to the contemplation of the thin and shrunken lips. They parted, and in a smile of particular meaning, the teeth of the changed Bernice disclosed themselves slowly to my view. Would to God that I had never beheld them, or that, having done so, I had died. The shutting of a door disturbed me, and looking up I found that my cousin had departed from the chamber, but from this ordered chamber of my brain had not, alas, departed, but would not be driven away the white and ghastly spectrum of the teeth, not a speck on their surface, not a shade on their enamel, not an indenture in their edges. But what that period of her smile had sufficed to brand upon my memory, I saw them now even more unequivocally than I beheld them then. The teeth! The teeth! They were here and there and everywhere, and visibly and palpably before me, long, narrow, and excessively white, with the pale lips wreathing about them, as in the very moment of their first terrible development. Then came the full fury of my monomania, and I struggled in vain against its strange and irresistible influence. In the multiplied objects of the external world, I had no thoughts but for the teeth. For these I longed with a frenzied desire. All other matters and all other interests became absorbed in their single contemplation. They alone were present to the mental eye, and they in their sole individuality became the essence of my mental life. I held them in every light. I turned them in every attitude. I surveyed their characteristics. I dwelt upon their particularities. I pondered upon their conformation. I mused upon the alteration in their nature. I shuddered as I signed them. In imagination, a sensitive and sentient power, and even when unassisted by the lips, a capability of moral expression. Of Maciel Salé, it has been well said. Again, the Latin.
No, this is French.
Oh no, this is not.
Que
This
tu
is French.
sais
I'm
pas
worse at
été
French.
décemment.
Thank you. I'm worse at French than I'm at Latin.
And of Bernice,
And of
I more
Bernice.
seriously believed que tu sais donc été des idées, idées, des idées, des idées. Sorry, I was going to read the
You're
French
fine.
for you.
Thank you. Here was the idiotic thought that destroyed me. Des
Des
idées.
idées. Yes, des idées.
Therefore it was that I coveted them so madly. I felt their possession could alone ever restore me to peace and give me back to reason.
Sorry. I'm just thinking, I haven't read this story since I was in maybe like high school or college. This man has like ADHD or autism. He clearly has very like hyper focus, and it's killing him. No, it makes sense, but I'm saying that he has he's got like so all his like the only thing he can think of is her teeth. So like he spent the whole beginning of the story explaining to you that he is sick in the head. Like he cannot stop thinking of something once he starts thinking. He has hyper focus issues. Like he cannot stop. And so he spent like an entire like 6 months just thinking about the city of God, which was like a book. Like he just it specifically on a phrase from the book. He couldn't think about anything else from the book. He could just think about those words, and he would just repeat those words until the words made no sense anymore. And so basically what he's trying to get across is that he saw a ghostly apparition of his cousin who has since departed from this world. And in that apparition, she smiled at him. Her dead, toothful smile. And those teeth stuck in his head and became his hyperfocus. Sorry, I didn't mean to like explain the story. But like it was just bouncing around my head. When I read this the first time, I thought that like what I couldn't really get what he was going at. But now I'm just like, oh yeah, he just has a hyper focus. This is just like this is classic. This isn't all that odd. I mean, it is odd, but it's not like odd, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Is it my turn? It's my turn.
It is yours.
And the evening closed in upon me thus, and then the darkness came and tarried and went, and the day again dawned, and the mists of the second night were now gathering around, and still I sat motionless in that solitary room, and still I sat buried in meditation, and still the phantasma of the teeth maintained its terrible ascendancy, as with the most vivid, hideous distinctness it floated about amid the changing lights and shadows of the chamber. At length there broke in upon my dreams a cry as of horror and dismay, and thereunto after a pause succeeded the sound of troubled voices intermingled with many low moanings of sorrow or pain, I arose from my seat. And throwing open one of the doors of the library, saw standing out in the antechamber a servant maiden, all in tears, who told me that Bernice was no more. She had been seized with epilepsy in the early morning, and now, at the closing of the night, the grave was ready for its tenant, and all the preparation for the burial were completed. Okay, so maybe she wasn't dead yet, but now she's dead.
He did see a ghost of her.
Yes, he saw a ghostly apparition of her as she was dying. Like, she was not in the room, but he saw her. And he saw her as, like, a dead body. And he wants her teeth. Or maybe just wants to look at her teeth. Or he can't stop thinking about her teeth.
Something, geez.
I found myself sitting in the library, and again, sitting there, alone. It seemed that I had newly awakened from a confused and exciting dream. I knew that it was now midnight, and I was well aware that since the setting of the sun, Bernice had been interred, but of that dreary period which intervened, I had no positive, at least no definite comprehension. Yet its memory was replete with horror. Horror more horrible from being vague, and terror more terrible from ambiguity. It was a fearful page in the record of my existence, written all over with dim and hideous and unintelligible recollections. I strived to decipher them, but in vain. While ever and anon, like the spirit of a departed sound, the shrill and piercing shriek of a female voice seemed to be ringing in my ears. I had done a deed. What was it? I asked myself the question aloud, and the whispering echoes of the chamber answered me. What was it?
On the table beside me burned a lamp, and near it laid a little box. It was no remarkable in character, and I had seen it frequently before, for it was the property of the family physician. But how came it there upon my table? Why did I shudder in regarding it? These things were no matter to be accounted for, and for my eyes to at length drop to open the pages of a book, and to a sentence underscored therein. The words were the singular but simple one of the poet Ibn Zayat. Will you please?
Decebant mihi sodale si, sepulchrum amice visiterem, curas mies aquantulum fore levetat.
Why then, as I perused them, do the hairs of my head erect themselves on end, and the blood of my body became congealed within my veins? There came a light tap at the library door, and a pale as the tenant of a tomb, a menial entered upon tiptoe. His looks were wild with terror, and he spoke to me in a voice tremulous, husky, and very low. What was he? Some broken sentence I heard. He told of a wild cry disturbing the silence of the night, of the gathering together of the household, of a search in the direction of the sound. And then his tone grew thrillingly distinct as he whispered me of a violated grave, of a disfigured body enshrouded, yet still breathing, still palpitating, still alive.
He pointed to garments. They were muddy, clotted with gore. I spoke not, and he took me gently by the hand. It was indented with the impress of human nails. He directed my attention to some object against the wall. I looked at it for some minutes. It was a spade. With a shriek, I bounded to the table and grasped the box that lay upon it, but I could not force it open, and in my tremor it slipped from my hands and fell heavily and burst into pieces. And from it, with a rattling sound, there rolled out some instruments of dental surgery, intermingled with 32 small, white, and ivory-looking substances that were scattered to and fro about the floor.
That is the end, Bernice.
So, homeboy went to where her body was interred, pulled out all her teeth, and left her there.
And she was still alive.
And
She was less dead than people thought she was.
it turned out she wasn't dead. Can you imagine? This kid, this servant coming in like, hey, sees the bloody clothes, sees the spade, sees the box, sees him. He was supposed to marry this lady. I mean, I know they're cousins, but you know, whatever. He was supposed to marry her. Instead, he violated her corpse, which wasn't a corpse, and
Took her teeth.
left her on the ground. Sorry, that story just... all I remembered was that he took her teeth and she was still alive. Lardon, thank you for coming by. I appreciate you.
Sleep well, Lardon.
Get some sleep. Oh my goodness, Tessric. Do you want to read one more? I didn't realize how short they were.
These are quite short. I think I have time for one more.
Let's do one more. Do you have a preference?
I do not.
Then you said... Uh-oh. I'm trying to remember what you said before.
There was the gold bug, but that one's a little long. The Fall of House Usher was one.
I don't know how long that one is.
But again, that's also a bit of a lengthy one.
I was gonna say, I think that one's pretty long. The Cask of Amontillado is not terribly long from what I remember.
Shall we read that one?
Let's go for it. Here we go. Found it. No, well, no. I messed it up because I made it smaller. And then I think I fixed it, maybe. Oh no. I messed it up because I made it smaller and then I fixed it, maybe. How many times does he use cask? Okay, there we go. Cough, cough. Are you ready? Are you ready? Professor?
Indeed, I am.
Good. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as I best could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who so well know the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to a threat. At length, I would be avenged. This was a point definitively settled, but the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is redressed when the retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile, now, was at the thought of his immolation. I want to burn you. I want to burn you alive. Sorry.
He had a weak point, this Fortunato. Although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared, he prided himself on his connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians have the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part of the enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity, to practice imposture upon the British and Austrian millionaires. In painting and gemmary, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack. But in the matter of old wines he was sincere. In this respect I did not differ him from materially. I was skilled in the Italian vintages myself, and brought largely whenever I could. It was about dusk, one evening during the supreme madness of the carnival season, that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking too much. The man wore motley. He had on a tight-fitting parti strict dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hand.
I said to him, "My dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkably well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts." "How?" said he. "Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible. And in the middle of carnival?" "I have my doubts," I replied, "and I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price, without consulting you in the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain." "Amontillado?" "I have my doubts." "Amontillado?" "And I must satisfy them." "Amontillado?" As you are engaged, I am on my way to Lucchesi. If anyone has a critical turn, it is he. He will tell me. Lucchesi cannot tell Amontillado from sherry. And yet some fools will have it that his taste is a match for your own.
Let us go. Whither? To your vaults. My friend, no, I will not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement. Lutresi, I have no engagements. Come. My friend, no. It is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with nitre. Let us go nevertheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado, you have been imposed upon. And as for Lutresi, he cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado. Thus speaking, Bernato possessed himself of my arm, and putting on a mask of black silk and drawing a roquelaire closely about my person, I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo. Palazzo.
Palazzo. It's, I'm just like, he wraps you around with his like cape. He's like, here, come, let's go to your house and drink some wine. No, don't ask that guy. That guy doesn't know his wine. And I have a cold. It's the sniffles, dude. Come on. Oh my god.
There were no attendants at home. They had absconded to make merry in honor of the time. I told them that I should not return until the morning, and had given them explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I well knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all, as soon as my back was turned.
I took from their sconces 2 flambeaux, and giving one to Fortunato, bowed to him through the several suites of rooms into the archway that led into the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came at length to the foot of the descent, and stood together on the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode. The pipe, said he. It is farther on, said I, but observe the white webwork which gleams from these cavern walls. He turned towards me, and looked into my eyes with 2 filmy orbs that distilled the rheum of intoxication. Nietzsche? He asked at length. Nietzsche, I replied. How long have you had that cough? My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes. It is nothing, he said at last. Come, I said, with decision. We will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy, as I once was. You are a man to be missed. For me, it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is Luchesi.
Enough, he said. The cough's a mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough. True, I replied. And indeed I had not intention of alarm you unnecessarily. But you should use all the proper caution. A draught of this Medoc will defend us from the damps. Here I knocked off the neck of a bottle, which I drew from a long row of its fellows that lay upon the mould. Drink, I said, presenting him the wine. He raised it to his lips. With a leer, he paused, and nodded to me familiarly, while his bells jingled. I drink, he said, to the buried that repose around us, and I to your long life. He again took my arm, and we proceeded. These vaults, he said, are extensive. The Montresors, I replied, were a great and numerous family. I forget your arms. A huge human foot d'or. In the field of azure, the foot crushes a serpent rampant, whose fangs are embedded in the heel. And the motto? Nimomi mi impure lacet. Good, he said. The wine sparkled in his eyes and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm with the meadow. We had passed through long walls of piled skeletons with casques and punctions intermingling into the inmost recesses of the catacombs. I pause again, and this time I made a bold to seize Fortunato by an arm above the elbow. The nitre, I said. See, it increases. It hangs like moss upon the vaults. We are below the river's bed. The drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we'll go back ere it is too late. Your cough. It is nothing, he said. Let us go on. But first, another draught of the Madoc. I broke and reached a flagon of de Grave. He emptied it in a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce life. He laughed and threw the bottle upwards with gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him in surprise. He repeated the movement, a grotesque one. You do not comprehend? He said. Not I replied. Then you're not of the Brotherhood. How? You're not of the Masons. Yes, I said. Yes. You? Impossible. A Mason? A Mason, I replied. A sign, he said, a sign. It is this, I answered, producing beneath the folds of my recollet a trowel. You jest, he explained, recoiling a few paces. But let us proceed to the Amontillado.
Be it so.
Be it so. Oh, sorry. I forgot.
It's fine. It's a good story. Be it so, I said, replacing the tool beneath the cloak, and again offering him my arm. He leaned upon it heavily. We continued our route in search of the Amontillado. We passed through a range of low arches, descended, passed on, and descending again, arrived at a deep crypt in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeau rather to glow than flame. Flex, thank you for the follow. At the most remote end of the crypt, there appeared another less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains, piled to the vault overhead in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of this interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the 4th, the bones had been thrown down and lay promiscuously upon the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Within the wall, thus exposed by the displacing of the bones, we perceived a still interior recess, in depth of about 4 feet, in width about 3, in height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed for no especial use in itself, but formed merely in the interval between 2 of the colossal supports of the roof of the catacombs, and was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. It was in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his dull torch, endeavored to pry into the depths of the recess. Its termination, the feeble light, did not enable us to see. Proceed, I said. Herein is the Amontillado. As for Lucchesi, he is an ignoramus, interrupted my friend, as he stepped unsteadily forward, while I followed immediately at his heels. In an instant, he had reached the extremity of the niche, and, finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface were 2 iron staples, distant from each other about 2 feet horizontally. From one of these depended a short chain, from the other a paddock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was too much astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. Pass your hand, I said, over the wall. You cannot help feeling the needle. It is very damp. Once more, let me implore you to return. No? Then I must positively leave you. But I must first render you all the little attentions in my power. The Amontillado! He ejaculated. Ejaculated my friend, not yet recovered from his astonishment. True, I replied. The Amontillado. As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones which I have before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials and with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of my masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was the low, moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was then a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier, and the third, and the fourth, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which that I might hearken to it with the more satisfaction. I ceased my labors and sat down upon the bones. Then, when at last the clanking subsided, I resumed the trowel, and finished without interruption the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh tier. The wall was now level with my breast. I again paused, and holding the flambeau over the masonwork, threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, seemed to thrust me violently back. But for a brief moment I hesitated. I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess, but thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs, and felt satisfied. I re-approached the wall. I replied to the yells of him who clamored. I re-echoed. I aided. I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamorer grew still. It was now midnight.
It,
Oh, you go.
it was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th and the 9th and the 10th tier. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position, but now there came from out the niche a low laugh that wrecked the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, "A very good joke indeed, an excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it at the palazzo, over our wine." "The Amontillado," I said. "Yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will they not be awaiting us at the palazzo? Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone." "Yes," I said, "let us be gone. For the love of God, Montresor." "Yes," I said, "for the love of God." But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, "Fortunato!" No answer. I call again, "Fortunato!" No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There it came forth, in return only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick. It was the dampness of the catacombs that made it so. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone in its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For half a century, no mortal had disturbed them. In pace requiescat. In pace requiescat.
Rest in peace.
Amontillado.
The Amontillado. he ejaculated. I forgot that was in there. Oh my gosh. It's such a good story.
It is.
Ah. And I was really happy to see Flex appear. That was awesome.
Yes.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Ah. Thank you so much, Tessric.
Thank you for having me.
I really, really had fun reading these. Smooch your homie hour. Oh my goodness. I gotta smooch biddies. Mwah. Yeah, the sound alerts are muted for right now. Since we were reading some spoopy stories, we started off with some Poe. But we're planning on doing this again, right, Tessa? Some more
I
spooky
do believe
stories?
so.
Maybe some more spooky stories?
I mean, Poe has written a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It
Jinx,
won't be for lack.
I can't believe you're wasting your points this way. I really, really
Uh,
had a lot of fun.
yes, it was fun. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh, hmm. No, I'm just stealing your
Knowledge.
points. You don't get to join the Discord. In fact, I think I'm going to revoke your access. You won't be in the Discord anymore. Non plus. I learned a lot about Tessric today. I learned that Tessric could not read French.
No, I cannot. I cannot read French, and my Latin and Italian both need a lot of work.
Uh, I'm sorry, Jinx. I'm sorry, but I'm also not sorry. It happens. I hope that everyone had a lot of fun and was able to really chill out. Because I feel like that's like the best part of doing reading streams with Tessric is that they're very relaxing. Because Tessric
Not sure about.
has a calming voice. And
I'm
I've
not sure
heard
about
nice things
relaxing
about
stories.
my.
You
No,
do
they
have a
were not
nice voice.
relaxing stories. They were very fun to read stories. I
Yes.
enjoyed I enjoyed playing the part of a crazy person. Like in the Telltale Heart where he's just like, I can hear the beat. I can hear it. They can hear it. They hear it. They are making fun of me. Like just like the way that you convince yourself.
Thoughts that might not necessarily be true.
Mm, mm. For sure, for sure. All right. I'm gonna raid out, but I am so thankful for you being here, Tessa,
Thank you for having me.
and I'm glad that we decided to do this again. Mm-mm. Um, there's someone playing a game that I think will be very, very similar to the chill vibes of our stream. Playing Satisfaction. And that is a very satisfying game. If it's the game that I'm thinking of, where you're trying to be very satisfied. I hope that we were very satisfied. Okay. Good night, everyone. I love you. And I hope that you get to eat your favorite snack. If not tonight, then tomorrow. That is my wish for you. Tessric, do you have any wishes for people?
To eat good food and sleep well.
Awesome. Okay. See everyone later. Bye bye.